Welcome to Spill the Tea. Today we're talking to Leslie Dacapo, who is a futuristic romantic comedy writer. So welcome to Spill the Tea, and today I'm speaking with Leslie Dacapo. Did I say that right? The Dacapo part?
Yeah,
Close-ish.
DeCapo. Yeah.
I've got one of those horrible last names too. But yours is actually a pen name.
Yes.
Did you want to tell us why you chose to write under a pen name?
Okay. Well, um, being a middle-aged guy writing romance, I kind of felt that a gender-neutral pen name might be kind of fun. This is also kind of a redirection of my writing career, and I decided to go with the name Leslie because it's in honor of one of my favorite actors, Leslie Nielsen, who
Oh, awesome.
had a very good career as the leading man and then changed later in life to be a comic actor. And so kind of between those two things, I thought that would be just a good pen name to start with.
Kind of
And
a good fit for what you're doing.
the
So
fit for what I'm doing, yes.
your books are th- I mean, the title is really fun. Kiss of the Bionic Mermaid. Like it's something that's unusual, and yet I'm very interested. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about it?
Okay. Well, the story is a futuristic rom-com, so it is set in the not too distant future, and there's a number of different technologies that are there, and one of those is a prosthetic exomuscle that can be used under a mermaid tail. And I don't know if you're familiar with the actual present day contemporary mermaid community, but there are quite a few mermaids out there wearing tails made of silicone or fabric. And I've loved doing the research on this because it's been fascinating. My daughter was always very interested in mermaids and had a friend who wore a mermaid tail, and so that kind of started the process and started the thinking. But doing the research has opened up my eyes to just what an amazing uh, world, amazing community that is. So, in the story, the main character, Jana Cooper, she works at a mermaid themed amusement park, and she has a tail that allows her to not just to swim, but swim quickly. You know, it's basically imagine a dolphin tail that you can wear. And so that's the idea I had there. She's able to swim quickly, to jump, and performs in the show. The um, story starts out with her in a performance, and at the encouragement of the park's general manager, she does what she calls her bionic cannonball, which allows her to send a splash into the first three rows of seats. She comments that most people tend to think those red seats are left over from when the shows were all about dolphins and whales, but now as a mermaid, she can do that too. What she finds out later is that sitting in the front row is a handsome billionaire man who is his name is Obsidian Hayes, and that day he bought the park. So she is just now splashed the park's new owner and general manager,
Which is
and
not a good beginning.
not necessarily the best of beginnings. So she's worried about her job. He understands that this is part of, this is part of the show. So he's not necessarily upset, but they uh, they end up traveling together to an event called the Marathlon, which is kind of the first of its kind competition that allows these bionic mermaid tails. And so you've got I wanted this to be very much a romance first and the science fiction later. So made sure to hit all of the right points with the adhesion and, um, you know, the hesitancy with a workplace type romance and things like that. So, but I had a lot of fun working with this, and also just kind of inventing the technology for the world to exist in.
So how far in the future would you say that it is?
I'm kind of picturing 2065, 2070, somewhere in there.
So not too far, but
Right.
far enough that we can imagine whatever we want, right?
Right, right. It's far enough there. I wanted it to be, I mentioned that it's a kind of a guardedly optimistic future. I did not want to write a dystopian. There are a lot of good dystopian romances out there, and that just wasn't the story I wanted to write. So I've tried to think of what are the fun technologies that might be there. Uh, someone, one of the things that uh, a side character has, she's able to, with an electrostatic comb, change the color of her hair using, you know, basically the same technology you would find in digital paper, but now it's embedded in her hair, um,
Oh, that's
and
cool.
bionic tails and everything like that. So
I think a lot of women are going to be jealous, getting to
it's,
change the
you
color of
know,
your hair whenever you want.
there's a lot of things that start out in science fiction, and someone says, "Hey, I like that idea. Let's actually see if we can make it." So maybe that'll be a thing, and
Very
maybe you won't
true.
have to wait until 2065 to get that.
And I have to say, I love your website. I had a look at it, and just the home page where you have those lovely buildings, futuristic buildings in the
Mhm.
background, and the couple up front. And I think that couple is from your other book, An Engineer's Guide to Kissing.
Yes. Yes. So this is my reader magnet. It's a novella that
Hmm.
is set in roughly the same world. It's the origin story for the Bionic Tales. And so the main character, the main female character is a mermaid. The male character, they're both engineers, and he works on the tail. He has a niece who has basically she needs leg braces. He's a prosthetics engineer, so he's able to help her with that. But when she goes to try on a mermaid tail, there's a flaw in the tail splits, and she's devastated. So he is focused on how can I make something with integrated bionics into this tail, and they work together to do this tail for this young girl. And as they're working together, as is wont to happen in a romance, they tend to hit it off really well. So
So even though it has scientific elements, it really is the romance and the story first and all the feels.
yes, yes, that's definitely my goal. One of the things that and one of the reasons I kind of even got into this, I was at a writers conference, and a number of my friends were talking about their favorite historical romance, and
Mm.
someone mentioned Pride and Prejudice, and
Yep.
one of the other authors says Pride and Prejudice was not a historical romance. When Jane Austen wrote that, it was contemporary.
At the
And
time,
it's just
yes.
happened, and it's happened to survive long enough for it to be now historical. And my brain, I tend to grab onto things and overanalyze them. I think that's another author trait that a lot of people can identify with. But I thought, gee, if we were to take one of our contemporary romances today and send that back to our grandma, back in the 1960s, it would read like science fiction.
It would.
Here we are, we're walking around with supercomputers in our pocket. We can make long distance phone calls without any charge. Our TVs are big and flat and hang on the wall like a picture. I mean, all these things, our cars drive this places.
Electric cars?
It's, yeah, our electric
Yeah.
cars. We have computers that can help us do all of these amazing things, a library of information at our fingertips. And so what my thought then was, well, what would a contemporary romance from 2070 be like if it was sent back here? And that has kind of been the guiding principle for how do I write this story.
So what made you decide to become a writer?
Well, I always kind of wanted to be a filmmaker, and about 20
I
years
can
ago,
sympathize with that.
yeah, it just seemed like a lot of fun. I've always been an avid reader and loved reading, but being a filmmaker seemed really exciting to me. And about 20 years ago, I read an article about people who were able to do that. They were doing independent films. This is right about
Hmm.
the time YouTube was coming out, and it was finally possible for somebody with a few $1,000s and a handful of dedicated friends to go out and make some films. And I thought, well, this will be great. And so while I waited for, to come up with a few $1,000s and some friends, I started writing these little scripts. I wanted to be ready once I finally had everything in place make these films. And after a while, I realized that the time and the money were probably never going to actually materialize. But I was having so much fun writing these little scripts that I decided that I would keep doing that. And so I was working on a story or a screenplay that was it was a contemporary coming of age, and I wanted to write the science fiction, but I knew it would be a lot harder to get a science fiction film made. So I started with this
Hmm.
contemporary coming of age idea, and that actually turned into my very first novel. Um, and that was published. It's called Bumpy Landings and published under my given name, Donald Carey. And it's in the it was set in Hawaii. I grew up in a small town in Hawaii, and I started writing. It was a very cold February day, and so I was kind of homesick for the tropics. And the story did okay. It was picked up by a small regional press, and I wrote a second book. And by the time
Hmm.
I had that one done, the small press had transitioned away from fiction into nonfiction, so I self-published that. And then I wrote a couple of science fiction adventures, and I tried really, really hard not to let them be romances because that's what my muse kept trying to get me to do. And the harder I tried, the farther off the rails they went. And so,
Characters will tell you where they want to go.
it just didn't work. And it ended up being this great bloated mess of a lot of really great ideas tied together with not a whole lot of plot. And now I know there are some major motion picture franchises that can get away with that, but I don't have that as an independent author. So I had to kind of set that aside, and I've actually been stripping that for parts. So that's actually where the bionic prosthetic tales came from originally, was in that
So,
science fiction epic.
so that's
But
kind of like your reserve idea board at this point.
that's right. No, I definitely have a lot of great ideas. I can be mining this for the next decade, I think. So
So are you now, you're now publishing independently, you said. So are
yes,
you published wide or are you published just with Amazon?
I am published wide. The last book that I published independently, I went ahead and went just with Amazon, and it did okay. But I that was a good uh, 12 years ago, and in that time, I've done a lot of writing and a lot of research,
Hmm.
and decided that I kind of wanted to go wide. I know that there's maybe some financial benefit to sticking just with Amazon, but for me, right now, I'm more concerned about how many people are going to read my story as opposed to how much money am I going to make on it. So I feel like going wide gives at least a better chance for exposure to more readers.
That's
We'll
true.
see if
That's
we'll see
definitely
if it
something
works
to think
out.
about.
Yeah.
So your covers are really cool. They're kind of the um animated type vibe.
Mhm.
What made you choose to go with that?
Well, they are they're kissing only rom-com, and I think that's kind of that's the style that tends to be more popular with that. So that's kind of my promise to the reader, trying to make sure that I get the right target audience, that people who are interested in the books know that that's what it is. And I specifically went with that to have very limited um, science fiction uh, feel to it, because the romance is first and foremost there. I did have my cover designer give it a little bit more of a sci-fi type font, and I think between that and the word bionic, you kind of get a sense that there's going to be some futuristic elements in here. But for the most part, it's the romance, and that's what I wanted to convey with the cover.
I think you've gone for like a really niche audience, but there will be a very loyal audience once you have them. Was that your intention?
I realized that it could be a fairly niche audience. I'm hoping that fans of just contemporary rom-coms will find these accessible and able to pull those in, and that it will actually expand a little bit. I One of my favorite um, things I've heard more than once in advanced reader reviews is I was surprised at how accessible this was, or I was surprised at how easy it was to understand the technology. I was surprised that it read like a romance, and that was definitely my goal. And so I understand that it very well could just be in a niche, and it's a niche that I've enjoyed writing, and I've had just so much fun doing these books and kind of outlining the rest of the series. So I think it will be I will have fun, and my readers I hope will also have fun. So
So you're saying that this is a series. So these books, are they standalone or do you have to read them in order? How many are you
um
planning?
so there's three in the series plus the novella, the origin story. They will I want them to be standalone, but they are fairly closely interconnected. So they would definitely make more sense read in order. I've got The Kiss of the Bionic Mermaid, which is the billionaire romance. The next one up is Heart of the Bionic Merman. So there's Jaina's coach uh, is that bionic merman, and I he's probably the only character that I've actually based off a real person. I'm imagining Jason Momoa from Aquaman in this role, and that's an enemies to lovers uh, trope. And then the last book will be Lies of Leviathan, which is of course the fake romance trope. So hopefully those all come together, and I really enjoy working with the characters, and I think that'll be a good, solid uh, arc for those characters.
So I would assume that you've done a lot of research into romance because you are definitely hitting popular tropes, just like you mentioned. So tell us about that. How did you come across the writing romance part?
Well, I have I was in an area where there were several writers that I've known for many years from different conferences and things, and we had a writing group, and I was the only one not writing romance. Um, I have a lot of friends in the writing community who are romance writers, uh,
Hmm.
and I enjoy going to the rom-com movies, and they're fun to me. I enjoy the comedy part of it, and the feels are great as well. So being able to read my friends' books and hearing over the conversations from people in my writing group, it just I realized that that was something that would go over really pretty well. That I would be comfortable and enjoy doing that. It is not my first nature. I do have to take a little bit of extra time and energy working on it. The whole engineer's guide to kissing thing was primarily me trying to figure out, okay, how do I make this work? And I mentioned that to somebody, and they said, you need to make that the title of your next book. And so uh,
It is a
that's how
good
that title
title.
came about. It was, I joking that I once I was done with this, I could write a nonfiction book. He said, no, this needs to be a novel or at least a novella. So
So, on your website, you did say that you go to a lot of writers groups in your area. How
yeah.
many have you been to?
So writers
What types do you
conferences.
like to go?
So I have a handful of conferences. I went to my first conference. There's a Storymakers conference that's in Utah that I went to way back in 2008, and I have since been for a number of years on the committee for that conference. I actually do
Oh,
the
nice.
technology for the conference. Um, and there's another conference, the American Night Writers Conference, that's in the Phoenix area in the fall. I've done the tech for that. The teach at the Nebraska Writers Guild Conference, which was just last week, and then here in the Kansas City area, we had the Storymakers Midwest Conference or Storymakers Kansas City, and that's I've been going to that one. This will be the 11th year, I think, that we've done that
Wow.
one. Um, it's been just a lot of fun, and I really enjoy it. My wife says, can't you maybe skip one? And I come up with a list of 50 other conferences. I could have gone to any of these. These are the ones I skipped, but I like to go to these three or four.
And that's one of the things I really like about the writing community is that, we're very open, we're very supportive. We have, conferences for beginners, and intermediate and for even expert level people.
Yeah. And it's wonderful. I love going and meeting new people. I love helping people who are just starting out. I love learning from people who've been doing this for a lot longer and gotten a lot deeper into it. It's just wonderful.
Awesome. And so how long does it take you to write a book?
Well, there's the rub, isn't it? My first book took me about 8 years.
Oh, wow.
Um, the second one took about 5. This last one took right around 2.
Hmm.
And my goal is to finish the next one by this time next year. So
Oh,
I mentioned Mermaid, the that's I intentionally released this book on the first of Mermaid, and I want to do the same thing with the next one. I think we can kind of establish that as a pattern. So fingers crossed. I've worked out and built enough of the world, and have enough. I, project management is something that I do as part of my day job. So I've had to take those skills and really apply them to my writing time and the writing process to make sure I'm getting everything done. So fingers crossed we can do it in a year. Um, Maybe I'll be able to get to a point where I'm, every 6 months, but I I will never be a book a month guy. I don't think even if I was
yeah.
doing it full time, that's not something I could really do.
Some people are able to, and some people, it takes longer and it just, to make the magic happen.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's the thing, right? Everybody's different, which is great because when you have find a favorite author, you want to it doesn't matter how long it takes, you're going to wait for
Right.
that next book.
Yeah, it is. And and I'm glad there are people who are able to write very quickly because I enjoy reading their stuff as well. So
Hmm. Now, for this series, it's set in one world, right? And you said it's going to
mhm.
be about 3 books. Now, if this becomes very popular, would you revisit that world with a different series or maybe expand the series? What
I,
would you
I
think?
I do expect to stay kind of in generally in that same world with the next series. I may be able to, if I need to, I can change some of the rules of the world a little bit, but I like the idea of having the kind of the same world and similar uh, technology, um, moving on with some of that. Another thing that I'd really like to do, would be to establish the world, and then I mentioned I've got friends. I'd love to do like an anthology where everybody has a chance to write within that world.
Oh,
I'll
that
have
would be
to.
cool.
That would be a lot of fun, and I'll have to prove the world out first, and before I can try and talk anybody else into it. But I think that would be a lot of fun to get somebody else's take on this world, and be like everybody's writing in a 1920s, but what is 1920s? That's, I mean, you got the whole world that you can draw from, and so the same kind of
Yes.
thing. I'd love to see what other people are able to do with that.
What ideas they come up with and what their
Yes.
characters would or wouldn't do. That's a
Exactly.
cool idea. And what advice would you have for other authors looking to, go into a kind of specialized romance niche?
I would say find something that you love and make sure that it's something that you feel very passionate about. Um, know that there may be a bigger audience for it. There may be a smaller audience. I do think that if the book is well written, that the niche can grow.
Hmm.
But the reason I'm in this niche and not just trying to chase the market with the regular contemporary is because I have so much fun at it, and writing, it takes me a long time. I've got a full-time job. I have, kind of some high maintenance folks at home, and so every writing hour comes at kind of a pretty great expense to me personally, and so I have to be doing something that I love, or I will set it aside.
Hmm.
And yeah, make sure it's something that you love.
I think that's very important because, I mean, if otherwise it's hard to continue, right? I
It
think
is.
that's very, very good advice. So, I want to thank you for coming on our show. And I'm also going to let our viewers know that they can go to the description of this video and they will find a link to your website and to your books. And I really do appreciate you coming on here and talking to us.
Well, I really appreciate the chance. It's been a lot of fun, and I've enjoyed watching the videos. Appreciate you talking to different authors. I think this is a great platform, and I've enjoyed getting to know other people through your podcast.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You bet.